Coming up on Bridge City News. You may have felt a bit of a rumble yesterday. That's because there was an earthquake that hit in Idaho. We have the details. A special tribute took place recently in Nobleford in honor of a volunteer firefighter who died while hunting. And MPs are looking at giving themselves a raise during the COVID-19 crisis. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, has the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Many residents across southern Alberta felt a bit of a rumble on Tuesday. The cause was a 6.5 magnitude earthquake that was centered in the rural town of Stanley, Idaho. Officials for the U.S. Geological Survey confirmed the quake struck just before 5 o'clock yesterday, and it was felt as far west as Vancouver and Seattle. Many in the Calgary and Lethbridge area also said they felt the earthquake. At this point, there are no reports of any damage, and officials say there is still a chance of aftershocks. A hospital located about 100 kilometers south of the epicenter felt the quake, but officials say it did not interfere with any patients. The hospital in Blaine County is on the front line of Idaho's coronavirus outbreak. The RCMP have arrested an adult male in connection with the shooting deaths of 2 hunters in the Glendon, Alberta area. The man is facing 2 counts of second-degree murder. 39-year-old Jake Sansom and his 57-year-old uncle were gunned down while moose hunting over the weekend. Both men have Métis ancestry and hunting rights. Jake Sansom was recently laid off as a heavy-duty mechanic in Nobleford. He was also a volunteer firefighter in the area. The town's fire chief, Ryan Wagner, said Sansom was always the one who was willing to help out. A GoFundMe page called Sarah Support has already surpassed their goal of $35,000 for Sansom's wife and children. Many firefighters from stations across southern Alberta paid tribute to Jake Sansom. Firefighters from regions including Nobleford, Barons, Colehurst, Coaldale, and Picture Butte loaded up around 20 vehicles and drove with their lights on in honor of the 39-year-old fallen volunteer firefighter. Lethbridge firefighters responded to a residential fire along the 100 block of Pacific Landing West last night. 2 people suffered from smoke inhalation. Chief Fire Marshal Heath Wright says that the fire in the garage was dealt with in a timely manner.
It was handled quite quickly by our firefighters, and it was right now we know the origin was in the garage and it was accidental, and from just first looking at the fires from the fire investigators, it's been reported that we believe it was unintended smoking material that started it.
According to the fire department, the blaze caused around $30,000 in damage. The fire department also addressed some concerns earlier today about some residents who have been hoarding gasoline.
As far as hoarding the gasoline, I understand that it's inexpensive or less expensive than it was. The fact is that first of all, it's against the law. You can only store 30 liters of gasoline in a garage or shed that's attached to a dwelling unit. Storing, there could be difficulties with the storage because gasoline is an abrasive liquid, and it can actually cause destruction of the container itself. So it could cause, gasoline spillage or any type of contamination that obviously we don't want.
The average price in Lethbridge right now is 73 cents a litre, which is the lowest it's been in over a decade. The Lethbridge Waste and Recycling Centre has a reminder that during the COVID-19 pandemic, they are only open for essential services. That means they are no longer accepting large metal items and do not want you to throw away things like construction or renovation waste. They also have noticed a large surge in illegal dumping.
We have been seeing people dumping tires, pallets, hazardous waste at the sites. We want to remind residents that these actions will further burden the resources needed to manage the local pandemic response. The minimum penalty is $250, and if this situation is repetitive, it can go up to $5,000.
The site will no longer be available on weekends, but weekday hours remain open from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. Nonprofits in our city are eligible to receive a portion of the $30 million towards emergency funding from the provincial government. The city said that today was the deadline for applications. City officials encourage groups to team up in order to pool for the funding.
The final decision will be made by the Government of Alberta. Here at City Hall, we're trying to encourage people to submit an application that gives them the strongest possibility of being accepted. So anything that's collaborative, I think, is a stronger application. But they have told us that it's urgent to submit as soon as possible. They want the funds to start rolling out as soon as possible.
The city will submit all entries to the province as part of a package deal. Now that COVID-19 has become such a large issue, more meal delivery services are helping out those who cannot shop for themselves. They're also helping people who want deliveries made to their homes if they're in isolation. Leave Light on Delivery is a local meal delivery service, and they're doing their part to help out those during these tough times.
People are really appreciative of the work that my drivers do, and they're out there possibly getting exposed and interacting with the public and everything. But people are really good, and social distancing and leaving stuff at the door and just calling them, and contactless payment, e-transfer to the drivers directly and everything. So yeah, no, it's been really good, and the people are really responsive and thankful to my drivers. So
lupus is a long-term autoimmune disease. Those who have lupus are vulnerable to the COVID-19 virus. Now, there's a woman in Lethbridge who has lupus who's looking to get her story out about the challenges she faces daily. As Micah Quinn explains, it is a battle that she does not have to face alone.
Lupus is an autoimmune disorder, and Matea Kovacs has been diagnosed with it since November of last year.
For myself, I have a lot of joint pain, whether that be in my knees, like my ankles. I have a lot of swelling in my feet, my legs. I also can experience a lot of brain fog, which is like confusion sometimes, blurred vision, headaches. Even it happens where I feel nauseous at times, and the biggest one is fatigue.
Kovacs takes hydroxychloroquine, and she says it helps with her swelling and joint pain. It also prevents the spread of lupus to her organs, and she says she also takes prednisone, which is a steroid.
It gives you a lot of different side effects too as well, but if you're in a reaction and you're feeling very, your body's kind of almost going into like a reactive state, the doctors will usually put you on that for a certain amount of months.
Now that Kovacs has lupus, she is being very cautious because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and she says the two have very similar symptoms.
A lot of the symptoms that we would have also are symptoms of COVID, which is very interesting. Like respiratory, sometimes we'll randomly have a cough, or we feel like sometimes we're congested, right? And sometimes you wonder like, oh, is that a cold? Is that COVID? Especially now, it kind of makes you a little bit worried, right?
She says that she has a great support group, and that just because symptoms might not be visible, lupus can be felt on the inside.
And I have a lot of support from my family, my husband, my brother, my parents, like my in-laws, my family. So people could be looking okay on the outside, but really they're dealing with a lot in the inside. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle to understand.
Matea Kovacs says that she will continue to live her life with this autoimmune disorder and that she won't let it define her. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney met with the media today and said our province now has 117 new cases of COVID-19, which brings our provincial total to 871. A couple of people also passed away from the virus.
This large jump in the number of new infections in Alberta is due mainly to the fact that Alberta Health Services processed a large number of backlog tests, indeed over 4,500 over the past 24 hours, a record number for a single day. That backlog had developed because of a temporary shortage of reagents, an essential element in the testing. We now have an adequate stock of those supplies. We also must share the sad news that 2 more Albertans have died as a result of COVID-19. Our deepest sympathies go out to the loved ones of those who have been lost. This has been the toughest week of the pandemic for our province, with the number of deaths increasing by 8 to a total of 11.
While we are focusing on the pandemic before us, I want to stress that all lives are important, and our health system cares about all of them. As the Premier noted, since yesterday, we have now confirmed 117 new cases of COVID-19.
Hinshaw went on to say that out of the 4,500 coronavirus tests performed on patients so far, 98% came back negative. BC's provincial health officer says physical distancing and self-isolation rules may have to carry on into the summer. Dr. Bonnie Henry says her province will always be in some form of prevention until there's a vaccine or enough people are immune.
Our number of new test-positive cases is 43 today, which brings us to a total of 1,013 people in British Columbia who've tested positive for COVID-19. realistically, and I've said this before, we are going to be in some form of having to monitor and prevent transmission of this virus until we have a vaccine, or until enough of the population is immune to it that it's no longer infecting people. But we know that that's a very high number. So a vaccine is something that we need to really, really push for. We are likely in our first wave right now, and we're watching what's happening in Wuhan, for example, when movement is starting again, restrictions are being lifted, and we have to go back to a different way of thinking. So when we get through this wave, which will likely be in another few weeks, it may be into May for sure, we need to start thinking about what does it look like again to understand if we're starting to see importations again.
Ontario is launching a $50 million fund to help businesses retool their operations to produce medical equipment and protective gear for frontline workers. The province says the money will go towards things like gowns, coveralls, face shields, and ventilators.
This fund will help factories retool their production line to make the items we need, like face masks, gloves, swabs, ventilators, and lab testing equipment. We've signed a deal. We've placed an unprecedented order for 10,000 ventilators with O2 Medical Technologies. And the world-class manufacturers like Martin Rea, Magna, and Linamar. That's 10,000 ventilators made right here in Ontario for our hospitals that will save lives.
The federal government says it did not have enough protective equipment in its emergency stockpile to meet needs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Health Minister Patty Hajdu said successive governments in Ottawa have not spent enough money preparing for public health crises.
I don't have the numbers for you in terms of percentages and total numbers in the stockpile, but I will tell you that there is a deputy minister table working right now on an allocation that is based on actual need. We know that all hospitals are in need of personal protective equipment, and the provinces and territories are working with the federal government to develop an allocation process that really gets at making sure those products are going to the areas in the country that are experiencing the surges right now, so that we can do this in an equitable way and in a fair way that makes sure that Canadians and the healthcare workers that are serving those Canadians have their needs met in a way that's going to actually make sense.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the U.S. appears to have backed down on its plan to send soldiers to the Canada-U.S. border. Officials south of the border were floating the idea around to help U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials keep migrants from crossing the border to limit the spread of COVID-19.
The ongoing conversations we have with the American administration continue on a broad range of subjects, and we have heard that is not something they're continuing to pursue, but we will, of course, continue to engage with the American administration as new situations come up and as things develop.
The Prime Minister also says the longer it takes Canadians to follow the rules and stay home, the longer it will be before life can return to normal. Justin Trudeau says the length of the lockdowns will depend on the choices and behaviors of Canadians.
We have been open and transparent with Canadians on the facts, and I've said from the very beginning that there are a wide range of scenarios that we have been looking for, that we're planning for, that we are trying to work towards as a government, as a country. We know that we are going to be in place for a number of more weeks, perhaps more months, but everything depends on how Canadians behave. The choices you make to stay at home, to self-isolate, to not go to 6 different stores when you go grocery shopping, to try to go grocery shopping only once a week, to be very careful to keep those 2 meters apart when you go for a walk, if you're allowed to go for a walk. These sorts of things are what will arrest the spread and the increase of this virus. We need all of us to do the best we can to make it through this unprecedented situation, and that's exactly what Canadians are doing.
Our members of Parliament work very hard representing their constituents, and now those MPs are due for a raise very soon. That's right, a raise in their pay during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our political reporter, Brian Lilly, says, the timing couldn't be worse.
Right now, the MP's base salary, this is before their housing allowance, their per diems, what they get for being on a committee or a cabinet minister or being the PM, is $178,900. it's going to go up by about $2,700. The PM, regardless of who it is, and right now it's Justin Trudeau, regardless of who it is, the PM always makes double the regular MP. So he's going to go up to just about $364,000 with a $5,000, actually just shy of $6,000 raise this year. And that is going to leave a bad taste in the mouths of a lot of Canadians who are saying, okay, maybe you deserve it, maybe you don't, but right now?
Catch the full interview with Mr. Lilly discussing MP raises and how around 1 million people have applied for employment insurance after losing their jobs. That's coming up after business news. Christian Viviers is an entrepreneur. He's also a guy who modified a medical product he hopes will allow people to use masks longer in the fight against COVID-19. Viviers says he came up with the idea after hearing that healthcare professionals were using scarves and bandanas for protection amid the mask shortage brought on by the virus outbreak.
What we did is we increased the neck portion that has to be removed, allowing to be able to wrap just under the eye protection, going around covering the ears, the side of the mask, and wrap over the head. It's not a mask, it's an additional layer of protection to potentially extend the life of mask and give additional coverage. Doctors have been texting that this is a great idea, this is a product that they need to allow more coverage and to extend the life of their mask in a way. If we don't have doctors and nurses, who's going to take care of us when we're sick? So that's what triggered really in my mind that push to run here and start doing some modification and to test something, to come out with something to help. It's tragic when we get to that point.
A hospital in Boston has designed a freestanding coronavirus testing isolation booth they're hoping will protect medical workers examining new patients. They say it will also reduce the use of scarce, disposable protective equipment.
This is one of our bee-protected COVID testing booths. It's made of a plastic polycarbonate that's also shatterproof. It has 3 sides, so the provider is able to step inside wearing no personal protective equipment, slip their arms through the portholes into large rubber gloves, obtain a swab for the patient and their sample. The patient's able to leave as we bag the specimen, take a wipe, and clean any surface that the patient may have come into contact with. And in this way, we're ready for the next patient without ever leaving the booth.
You may have noticed when you go shopping at your local grocery store that there appears to be a shortage of toilet paper. Some families have been hoarding, and some suppliers are finding it tough to keep up with the demand. Well, down in Dallas, Texas, a tractor trailer hauling toilet paper crashed and caught fire, spilling the hot commodity all over the interstate. The toilet paper appears to have been large rolls typically used in stores, restaurants, and other businesses. Toilet paper has been in high demand amid the coronavirus pandemic. Producers have been ramping up production and shipping lots of the product to resupply stores wiped out by consumers buying toilet paper and paper towels in bulk. A dog trainer has come out with tips and tricks on how to keep your canine pet busy at home during the coronavirus pandemic.
Before you do your online meetings or you have some time where you just need to sit down and concentrate on something, it's a great time to set them up for success. Take them for a long walk ahead of time. Might be time to play fetch in your hallway, in your living room, kind of wear them out a little bit. We can't blame them if they're like, I'm bored, and they haven't done anything all day. It's not their fault. And find ways to make them tired. I tell people, like, if you have a muffin tin or cupcake tin, put some treats in there, put tennis balls in them. Make them work for those treats. Figure out how to get the tennis balls out, make it a good puzzle game for your pets using household stuff.
It is so important to take care of our fur babies, isn't it? We had another cool and snowy day here in southwestern Alberta. The snow should be ending temporarily. Full weather details are on deck. We had some light flurry activity again today, up to 4 centimeters of the white stuff. Tonight, mainly cloudy with a low near -16. A mixture of sun and cloud and a high of -8 degrees for tomorrow. Friday, the cloud should clear out and we should get up to 2 degrees. Saturday, mostly cloudy with the mercury dropping to -3. Sunday, the snow returns with a high of -2. Monday, snow mixed with rain and a high of +1. Tuesday, it should warm up considerably under a mainly sunny sky to 7 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 10 degrees and an average low of -4. The highest temperature on the state was recorded in 1966 at 20 degrees, and the record low was a chilly -21 in 1975. Sunrise was at 7:07, sunset at 8:03. Looking at tomorrow's national forecast now, expect lots of cloud cover and a high of 9 degrees in Victoria. Showers and a high of 8 for Vancouver. Overcast and -9 for Calgary on Thursday. Just a few clouds and -8 degrees for Edmonton. Mainly cloudy and -9 for Regina. Mostly sunny and -11 for Saskatoon. Expect heavy snow and a high of -1 in Winnipeg tomorrow. Lots of sunshine and 12 degrees for Toronto. A mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 9 for Ottawa. Rain and 7 is on tap for Montreal tomorrow. In Atlantic Canada, expect rain or drizzle and a high of 8 degrees for Fredericton. Rain and 7 for Halifax. Showers and 5 is on tap for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect freezing drizzle and a high near 2 degrees for tomorrow. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says with Keystone XL pipeline moving forward, it will better position our province to profit after the current economic problems caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. It will generate a net return of more than $30 billion through royalties and higher prices for Alberta oil in the next 20 years.
The Government of Alberta is making a $1.5 billion equity investment in Keystone XL this year, along with a $6 billion loan guarantee next year. This agreement marks the culmination of 6 months of negotiations and rigorous vetting of the agreement by government officials and industry experts. This agreement will kickstart immediate construction on the pipeline with the goal of increasing delivery of oil sands crude to American markets by 830,000 barrels per day. Our goal is to complete the project and commission operations by the summer of 2023. We project that this project, once fully achieved, will help us to generate an additional $30 billion in revenues for Albertans to support programs like healthcare and education and to maintain our standard of life.
Dollarama has suspended its financial guidance as sales dropped off last month due to the coronavirus pandemic. The retailer says business surged in February and early March as customers stocked up, but then declined as tougher measures were put in place to slow the virus. The comments came as the retailer reported its fourth quarter profit was up 4.5% from a year earlier to $178.7 million, while sales edged up just over $1 billion. Dollarama is keeping most of its stores open across Canada, including in Ontario and Quebec, where it has been declared an essential service. The auto parts and paint company Uniselect says it is laying off around half of its 6,000-member workforce in Canada, the United States and Britain because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The company says hours have been reduced by 20% for all employees who remain at work. It says about a third of its sites are being closed temporarily. Out of those that remain open, 28% are operating on reduced hours, while 7% are operating on a very limited basis. Less than a week after saying it was reopening 5 North American assembly plants, Ford has decided to close those facilities indefinitely. The announcement to reopen got a cool reception from the United Auto Workers Union. The spread of the virus has begun to hit the state of Michigan very hard. The TCF Center in downtown Detroit will soon be turned into a 900-bed field hospital for COVID-19 patients. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 502 points today to 12,876. The Dow was down 973 points to 20,943. The S&P 500 was down 114 to 2470, and the Nasdaq was down 339 points to 7360. Oil was up 72 cents on the day to $21.20 per barrel. Natural gas was down 5 cents to $1.59. Gold was up $1.64 to $15.93.15 an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $13.96 an ounce. Wheat is at $240 per metric ton, barley's also at $240, canola's at $466, and corn is at $258 per metric ton. Live cattle were down $4.50 to $100, feeder cattle were also down $4.50 to $119.23, and lean hogs were down $3 to $51.60. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to $70.45 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the RCMP have arrested an adult male in connection with the shooting deaths of 2 hunters in the Glendon, Alberta area. The man is facing 2 counts of second-degree murder. 39-year-old Jake Sansom and his 57-year-old uncle Morris Cardinal were gunned down while moose hunting over the weekend. Both men have Métis ancestry and hunting rights. Jake Sansom was recently laid off as a heavy-duty mechanic in Nobleford. He was also a volunteer firefighter in the area. Members of Parliament are looking at giving themselves a raise during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many are not happy about it, especially since so many Canadians have recently lost their jobs. Political journalist Brian Lilly has details coming up next. Ottawa recently announced help for small and large businesses in the form of a wage subsidy up to 75% to help keep people on the payroll. To talk more about it is political journalist Brian Lilly. Brian joining me once again from Toronto. Now, Brian, this applies to many business owners, but not for lawyers.
Not for lawyers, not for many professions. Look, as with any government program, you hear about the announcement and you hear about who it's going to help, and then a little while later you start hearing about who it won't help. And so lawyers reaching out to me, on the small side, maybe one or two lawyers in a small practice together, they've got staff on hand, or chartered accountants, other professions, and they're saying, look, we don't qualify under the Canada Revenue Agency rules as a small business. We are, we're in a different category. And the way this is structured now, it's not going to help us. So it's not going to help us keep our paralegals on staff. It's not going to help us keep our secretaries on staff or other people. And this becomes a real problem. And it's the type of thing that has shown up time and again. Look, I think that the federal government have been very complimentary to them in doing what they can, albeit it's a little bit slow in getting the money out the door compared to other jurisdictions. They're doing what they can to try and deal with a health crisis that has turned into an economic crisis. But there are always going to be people falling through the cracks. And this is a real issue. I mean, just earlier in the week before they announced this, I'd been writing about how so many private sector employees had been sent home without pay or just laid off and told, look, we don't have anything for you. The doors are closed. We can't do anything. And at the same time, there were government employees, many of whom, by the way, are working from home. But then there's a whole other category of government employees working from home, getting their full pay and, living next door to people who aren't getting anything. So there's going to be a lot of divides, a lot of problems with any sort of government help. They're doing what they can, but there's, people are going to be falling through the cracks, Hal. And that's what we have to worry about because it can create social divides and social unrest.
Now, when it comes to credit being offered by the Business Development Bank of Canada, Brian, many types of businesses will not qualify, including nightclubs, bars, and cannabis operations.
Yeah, those are just some of the places that are speaking up and saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't qualify. But also a lot of other businesses stepping up and saying, this is taking way too long. Even the folks at Business Development Bank of Canada are saying, we're overwhelmed and we don't know what to do. So it might have seemed like a good idea at the time, but now you're getting need up against bureaucratic stasis, I guess. I mean, they're just frozen. They're saying, how do we make sure this is done right? They're looking for the rules. These are people who are risk averse. The Business Development Bank of Canada is not out there like a hedge fund trader looking for the next big startup, and they're going to put a lot of money and they're going to take risk, Al, and they're going to look for a big payoff. No, these are government bureaucrats who are lending out money. I mean, consider how conservative and cautious a banker can be. Now make them a government banker, and they're even more cautious, even less risk averse. And so a lot of businesses stepping up and saying, this is not working out the way that it should. And you're going to see an awful lot of businesses, and through no fault of their own. Look, normally I would not be in favor of government handouts to business. I would not be in favor of all these wage subsidies. But we're talking about an economy that's being shut down by government dictate, by municipal governments, by provincial, to some degree, by the federal government. And people need to eat. We all need to be able to put food on the table at the end of the day. You and I are lucky. We're able to continue working, but a lot of people are not able to. What do you do when you're getting mass unemployment like this? You've got to do something. Otherwise, people will go to work, the virus will continue to spread, and the health concerns will grow instead of shrinking, which is what they're trying to do.
And with COVID-19, Brian, a quarter of small business owners say they don't know where they will get their rent or mortgage money for this month, for April.
Yeah, and it gets even worse when you get into sectors like personal services or hospitality. So, think about the place where you get your haircut, Hal, and every man in the country, more so than women, not exclusively, but even more so, we tend to keep our hair shorter. We need our hair cut more often. We're all looking around saying, it's getting a little long. It's starting to feel like the 70s. What do I do for my haircut? Well, the person that runs the barber shop or the salon where you go to get your haircut, they are very worried about what they're going to do for the rent or their mortgage payment if they own the place or they rent the place. They don't know where the next payment's coming from. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business surveyed their members, and a quarter of members said, we don't know where April's rent or mortgage payments coming from. But when you got to hospital, or when you got to personal services like barbers, like nail salons, like hair salons, it was 32%. Even worse for your neighborhood restaurant, bar, cafe, 44%. I mean, these are cash-intensive businesses. Cash comes in the door, cash goes out the door. It pays for employees, it pays for products. This is how the economy ticks. And they're saying, we don't know what we're going to do, and we're done. And as we just talked about with the BDC, nightclubs and bars, they're not qualifying for some of these loans. And some of them, let's be honest, whether you like them or not, they're big employers.
As Canadians wonder about the future, especially the economic future, MPs are taking raises, and the Trudeau Liberals are even hiking the carbon tax. Brian, during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that this went through, but it did. Look, on the issue of the raises, let's deal with them separately. On the issue of the raises, this has been going on for about 15 years. I believe it was back in 2005 that a bill passed because MPs were tired of voting raises for themselves, and then they'd get a lot of bad media attention. You know, it never looks good for a politician to say, I want a raise. But don't we all? I mean, don't you wish you could vote yourself a raise, Hal? You know, have a meeting with yourself, vote yourself a raise. We would all do it. And so politicians said, this isn't working out. Let's make it automatic. So every April 1st, MPs in Ottawa get a raise based on an aggregate of the public sector and private sector wage increases that are tracked by the government department in charge of labor statistics. So they look at all these things and they say, okay, 1 year it's 2.1%, 1 year it's 1.5%. The MPs get that. So right now, the MP's base salary, this is before their housing allowance, their per diems, what they get for being on a committee or a cabinet minister or being the PM, is $178,900. It's going to go up by about $2,700. The PM, regardless of who it is, and right now it's Justin Trudeau, regardless of who it is, the PM always makes double the regular MP. So he's going to go up to just about $364,000 with a $5,000, actually just shy of $6,000 raise this year. And that is going to leave a bad taste in the mouths of a lot of Canadians who are saying, okay, maybe you deserve it, maybe you don't, but right now? And the same thing goes with the carbon tax. The carbon tax, along with escalator taxes on alcohol and cigarettes and other issues, they're going up on April the 1st. So, hey, welcome. It's April 1st. Welcome to your new tax. It's wonderful, isn't it? You're paying more. Why? Well, I asked the Prime Minister about this in his teleconference media availability the other day, and he talked about how it's going to put the more money in your pocket, not for the average suburban or rural person. If you live downtown, you're probably doing quite well with the carbon tax rebate. But people living in suburbia, people living in rural areas, you are going to be paying more, no doubt about it.
Maybe the carbon tax increase in the raises, it's happening April 1st, maybe just an April Fool's Day joke.
You wish it would be that, but it's going to go on all year, Hal.
Brian, Canada's hitting the pause button on immigration due to COVID-19. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it was an issue that was raised to me by a friend and said, well, hold on, we're supposed to be bringing in 341,000 new permanent residents this year. Is that still going ahead? So I called up the immigration department. I said, okay, what's going on? Essentially, it comes down to this. During the travel restrictions, nobody's allowed into the country except existing permanent residents. So if you're already here, you're a citizen, landed immigrant, or the like, you can come in, or immediate family members can be brought in. Everyone else is barred. So if you are coming in from another country to move here, you can't right now. And that is a good thing. I mean, it makes no sense to tell us you can't go visit your neighbor and then, be bringing in thousands. I mean, it's almost 1,000 people a day, if you averaged it out, that we would be bringing into the country to move here. It makes no sense for them. It makes no sense for us. Let's, flatten the curve, as they keep saying. But also on the economic side, there are no jobs right now. And there are some immigration programs that require you to have a job to come here. A lot of those jobs, Hal, they're not there right now. They may come back. They may disappear forever, but they're not there right now. And so economically, both for the immigrant and for Canada, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I can't imagine my parents wanting to move to Canada, and they did in 1968. But I can't imagine them wanting to move to Canada if they'd already agreed, okay, we're going there, and then, 2 weeks before or a month before, the whole economy, heads in the wrong direction. You don't want to be doing that. So they're putting a pause on it now. Conservative immigration critic Peter Kent, who, by the way, is an immigrant himself, he says we should maybe put a pause on it a little bit longer until the unemployment rate recovers, because he figures that at the end of this, we're going to be left with a big unemployment figure as the economy tries to come back to life.
Yeah, we've seen the unemployment rate rise 15%, along with a 25% drop in GDP. Brian, economic predictions of COVID-19 crisis can be summed up in one word: dire.
Yeah, the parliamentary budget officers suggesting that we could be into this social distancing that we're all experiencing. Up until August, the deputy medical officer of health saying it could be into the summer that we're going to be in this type of situation. That leaves all of us wondering, when are we going to get back to work? So the PBO's prediction is a 15% unemployment rate in the next quarter, a 25% drop in GDP in the next quarter. And then after that, they expect that it'll start picking up again, zero growth for a little while. After that, 5% growth, which is quite good, but averaged out, they're predicting the slowest economic growth in this country since 1962. Let me put that into perspective. My parents weren't really in the workforce in 1962. They're retired now and well into their 70s. So there's not a whole lot of people working now who were working then. And so most of us have never seen an economic slowdown quite like this, Hal.
Brian, COVID-19 is making things very tough for logistics or trucking industry, with smaller truck stops forced to close and restrictions at larger ones. Even getting a cup of coffee is challenging for our truckers. I mean, here in town in Lethbridge, there was a trucker pulled off to the side of the road, went up to a local fast food restaurant through the drive-thru, asked for coffee, and they told him to take a hike. Such disrespect for our truckers. Unbelievable right now.
And even where they're dropping off supplies, they're being told you can't use the washroom. One of my colleagues at the Toronto Sun did a report on this, and he talked to one trucking company owner in Rosetown, Saskatchewan, who drives wheat between Saskatchewan and Alberta. And he's being told, look, he stops at one restaurant, one fast food restaurant, they'll let him walk through the drive-thru. The next one, they won't. So they're trying to get a cup of coffee. They're trying to get a bite to eat while they're on the road. They can't. They're told all over the place, you can't use the restroom. Talk to a trucking company owner in Oakville, Ontario, right here in the Greater Toronto area. And they're being told the same thing. And someone sent us a series of signs from places where truckers are dropping off saying, no access to the restroom. Do not enter the facility. Stay in your truck. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, I asked him about this the other day, and I'm sure other premiers and the Prime Minister will have things to say. But look, they all keep saying, all the politicians from the Prime Minister on down keep hailing truckers as the unsung heroes of what's going on. Without them, we don't have the medical supplies that our hospitals need. We don't have the food on our store shelves. We don't have anything going on without these guys. And we're telling them, you can't stop to go to the bathroom? Give me a break. So after Premier Ford made those comments, I heard from a spokesman for FedEx thanking him for that and saying we need to have respect for our drivers. I heard from the United Steelworkers, who represent 2,000 trucking and courier drivers across the country, who say the same thing. You've got to allow people to have basic facilities, basic ability to get a bite to eat, to use the bathroom. Otherwise, everything stops. And Premier Ford put it in a very good way. Can you imagine if the truckers turned around and said, all right, we're not dropping anything off? We'd all be at a big loss if that happened.
Absolutely, you bet. The federal government is asking for the release of some prisoners, Brian, and some provinces are allegedly refusing to send people to prisons. One man apparently violently attacked a police officer near Toronto within hours of being set free.
Yeah, look, I understand the theory behind this, and in theory, it works, and it's been used elsewhere. Release non-violent prisoners, people that are in prison for things that don't include assault or rape or murder, because prisons can be hotspots for this. And we've started to see COVID-19 showing up in prisons across the country already. And if it starts to spread there, then it spreads into the wider community, because you've got guards, you've got cooks, you've got wardens. And guess what? They all go home at the end of the day. And if they've been exposed to it, they're going to expose their families. And then it's going to spread into the wider community. So there is a public health concern. But where we draw the line is on violent criminals. And there was one guy who, long track record, bad record. A Toronto judge said to this man in York Region, so that's just north of Toronto, well, we can't send you to prison because of COVID-19. Within an hour of him being released, he was violently attacking a York Region police officer. It was caught on video. There are photos of it. Just an outrageous story. So I get it in theory, but it's got to be handled in the right way. And we've already seen that's not always the case.
Toronto Sun journalist Brian Lilly, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Today's society puts a lot of pressure on young girls to have outward beauty. The Photoshop beauty pics on glossy magazines likely contribute to that. But what about beauty on the inside, which I feel is a lot more important? Joining me now in studio to talk about it is Renee Peterson. She's a registered nurse and the founder of the Beautiful Inside Academy. Welcome back to BCN, Renee.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Beautiful Inside Academy, what is it all about?
Well, Beautiful Inside Academy is something that I'm so deeply passionate about. I have been running this academy for 13 years, and it's a sacred place for young women to come and to have the exploration of that inner self, to develop those inner tools, inner strategies, inner mindsets to launch them to the next level of who they say they want to be. So, yeah.
Why is beauty on the inside so important?
Well, I believe that once you're connected to that place, I mean, you know as well as I do, right? You talk to someone, you see them, and then what actually comes out of them is what makes them actually truly beautiful. And so I think when they truly identify it on the inside, it just really helps them even appreciate the external even more, and just helps them connect to the beauty of their life, the beauty of who they can be, the beauty in others. So it's just fun, foundational work as far as I'm concerned.
I have a daughter who's 21 years of age. She's a beautiful young woman, inside and outside. And when she was younger, the preteen, sometimes the awkward years, she would always say, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough, and I'm encouraging her, loving her, praying for her. I'm like, yes, you are, you're beautiful. But it didn't resonate with her. No matter what her mother or I said, it was like almost strangers saying, you're beautiful. Oh, I must be beautiful. Right. But when mom and dad said, it didn't really resonate with her. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know it's kind of that adolescent brain, right? Like they just thinking, you're my parents, you have to love me, you have to say that about me. And they're already in that identity kind of questioning, going, who am I worthy, am I lovable, am I enough? And so that's where I tell the parents, hey, that's okay, that's normal. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, but that's where I come in and I get to partner with you as a mom, partner with you as a dad, and support you in installing those beliefs that you so wish that your daughter would have at that time in her life. And so, yeah, it does. I actually kind of love it because it's just like I can also help make the relationship better. They're like, oh, wow, yeah, my mom says that or my dad says that. And so, okay, yeah, maybe that does have some clout. So it's really kind of magical at the same time as I do that inner work with them, help bridge and build those beautiful connections and foundations with parents as well.
So self-confidence is also very important, vital for our young people today, especially young girls. But social media can sometimes wreak havoc on a lot of young girls and their confidence.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we're in this age where everything's blowing up, and parents are parenting in an age of social media that we've never experienced before, right? So you look at TikTok, the predators, the research all around that stuff. And so along with that, yeah, I mean, we have so many filters now on social media. And so these young women are seeing these images and thinking everybody's perfect. And that's a word that I hear a lot in my academy. Well, perfect, or this is perfect, or I look over at her, right? And so it's just really helping them disconnect from some of that. And like I tell them, you run your own race. Like get like the blinders on like a horse, and what are you focused on, and who do you want to be? And when you're looking over here and comparison, because that's what that breeds, as well as also breeds like bullying. And so people just think, oh, well, I can say something behind a screen and well, whatever. And so the pain that happens, or that they've learning how to communicate, right? They're not learning this face-to-face or the power of communication. And so it's just this back and forth all on the media sites.
So how do you really explain, Renee, to a young person that what these trolls are saying on Twitter or Instagram is really irrelevant?
Yeah, well, it's
not
it
that
is
important.
True, and I think
These keyboard warriors, right?
Well, yeah, right. That's very well said. And so I think what it boils down to is I really help them see, like, that through the mindset work, that they get to decide what they believe. And so I teach them to ask those pertinent questions and to not, and once again, to take their focus off of that. Like, why would you spend so many hours trolling anyways and giving your time and energy to that? And so where do you want your focus to be, and who do you want to be, and where do you want your time to be? And then they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, that drains me to be doing that. And so just helping them develop those success habits and those strategies to not even be as tempted to go there.
How important is it for a young girl to have a mentor?
I think it's huge. I think it's everything. Like, I think you look at the resiliency model, and I think that our teenagers, they need a team. Like, if they need a counselor, great, let's get them in for a counselor. If they need a coach, let's get them with a coach. Like, let's buoy them up and support them in any way that they can. So they need that person that can be strong enough to also not buy into the lies that they're believing about themselves, or also buy into some of their manipulation, right? Where they're just kind of like, oh, well, that's how it is. But someone who's a strong, confident woman who can look at them and go, no, I'm going to actually challenge you on that. I'm going to stand in this space with you. I'm going to hold grace for you, and I'm going to hold you to a higher level of who I know you say you want to be. And then they're like, oh, okay.
Are there certain limits of what a mentor can and cannot do? And the reason I ask that, as a parent myself, a lot of times my kids would want to go down a certain path. I know this path will lead to destruction.
Yeah.
They're going to fall flat on their face because I went down a similar path when I was their age.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, it's not going to end well for you, right? So please don't go down the path, but you still have to let go, let God, let them do it. And sometimes they fail. It's like, oh my goodness, they're like, you know what? Dad, Mom, you were right.
Right, right.
So with a mentor, do you have to allow them to go through a similar path, similar experience?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I can mentor them through those things, but if that's who they're saying they don't want to be, like, I don't know, it seems like I have some clout there, right? And so I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes, and sometimes failure is our greatest teacher, right? So I say to my girls, it's not about failing, but it's about never quitting. And so, like, what do you learn from those mistakes? And so, yeah, I mean, helping them understand that, hey, these will be the choices, but the choices also have consequences. You can make the choice, but you also don't get to choose the consequence. And so I think when you explain it to them in certain ways and help them see bigger picture, sometimes they do take a step back. And I mean, really, let's be honest, right? Because as parents, when we're saying don't do this, don't do that, when they're trying to assert their independence and they want to find their way, they feel like by saying, well, I'm going to do that, right? They feel like that's
sometimes in rebellion. Perhaps,
in rebellion, right?
Yeah.
But I think as a coach and somebody who can support a parent and saying, okay, well, I understand why your mom would say that, because let's have a look at this. This is how this could play itself out. And then, you know, get them out of that defiance, but get them more into alliance. And then they're kind of like, okay, I do want to do that. What's good for me?
Renee, how can we give our girls more of the tools they need to succeed in life today?
Well, I believe that's part of sending them to me.
There you go.
But I do believe, like, as parents today, what I kind of see as a weakness is that we want to be their friends, right? We want them to like us, and we're so much invested in wanting them to like us that sometimes it's hard for us to step in our full empowerment and say, okay, I want you to look at this. I want to challenge that mindset. Or if they're complaining and being in complete victim mode all the time, instead of us trying to fix it and make it better, to just actually, as a mom, as a dad, you know, be in our own sense of self and go, okay, well, I get that. You can choose to continue to think that. But then this is how you're going to continue to feel. So you get to decide.
You know, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Renee, because a lot of times as a dad, I'm a problem solver. I want to fix it.
Totally.
And then my wife says, no, you're not supposed to fix it. Just leave it alone. But I want to. I want to help. I know I can help, right?
Right.
And so that's frustrating for me sometimes as a father.
Yeah. But it's also not about stepping back, because sometimes I see parents just step away and they'll be like, oh, well, they're 18, they're 16. I guess they got to just learn it. And I don't buy into that philosophy either. I buy into, okay, I am that person, and I'm going to stand there in that space, and I'm going to hold that space for them. And if they're going to cry and whine or whatever, then I'm just going to still be there, and I'm still going to coach them through it and just be like, okay, well, you get to choose, or how could you get yourself out of that, or how could you think of that differently, or what else could that mean? So as that parent standing in that space and not letting them be the victim, or not letting them manipulate you, right? Or as a parent going, okay, wow, that's bringing up my childhood thing that I wanted to fit in. So maybe I'm compromising and letting my daughter, you know, go do these things because I didn't get to do those things. And so it's a whole complexity. And so I work with parents and teenage girls to kind of just help them create the tapestry of that beautiful relationship and how to dance together. So.
How can we help our young people today learn how to develop good habits, not bad habits?
Well, I mean, I think that takes, as a parent, modeling it as well, right? I mean, how much time as a parent do we spend on social media and wasting our time and energy? Or, you know, how much of time as parents do they see us, like not getting up or laying our stuff out the night before, or using a day timer, or being committed to our goals, committed to our dreams, committed to our personal work? So a lot of it is modeling. And then that's where I just love getting our kids and our teenage girls, especially in front of people like me that can say, hey, these are decisions of destiny. And if you start implementing this, or how are you going to think about this, or carve out that spiritual time for yourself so that you can really be connected on the inside, so that you can be full of purpose, and that you can, you know, when something comes, you can have been like, okay, no, I know how I'm going to handle that, or this is my goal, or this is my focus. So it really all starts internally. And so getting them really connected to those places. And as parents, you know, carving out that space and that energy and those discussions around that. So.
Are you a parent yourself?
I absolutely
am. How many kids?
I have 2 beautiful daughters. So,
okay.
Yes.
So tell me about some of the challenges you faced as a parent with 2 young, beautiful women.
Yeah. Well, they're 25 and 23 now. So.
Okay. Maybe many years ago.
Many years ago.
Maybe 15,
yeah,
you know, 15, 18 years ago.
But really, I think for them, sometimes I've gone back and said to them, you know, how did you do this, or why this? And I mean, it was because I.
What worked and what didn't, right?
Totally, yeah. And it was because I modeled it. I mean, they saw me, and I'm not perfect. And if I wasn't perfect at something, I definitely would admit that and say, okay, well, let's work on this together, or this will be something that will really move us forward. And we kind of get the family on board. And I mean, it was just the 3 of us for 17 years. So yeah, it's just really boils down to what are you going to put into practice as a family on a day-to-day basis, and having those discussions about what it really does mean to be successful. And
did you use some of those experiences as a parent to model some of the programs with Beautiful Inside Academy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me about some of those programs that you offer.
Well, I do group coaching. So I run a group coaching academy for 13 weeks twice a year. And I do private one-on-one coaching with teenage girls all year long. I also do events and have been working with moms, and have been coaching some moms as well. So how can we do that? How can we help our relationship with our daughter better? So that's a lot of what I'm offering right now.
What advice would you give to a lot of moms today to really strengthen that relationship with their daughters?
Okay, I love that question. So the question I often put forth to my moms is, who do you need to be so she can be who she needs to be? And so it is like Dr. Christian Northrup kind of talks about it like this. It's kind of like osmosis. So when we're engaged in personal work, when we're modeling healthy relationships, when we're modeling healthy self-talk, when we're modeling healthy body image, so all of those things. So my coaching with the moms is like, where are those areas where you still feel that you need to up level, or those areas that you see in your daughter that she's struggling? Does she mirror that from you as well? And so it's not about shaming or blaming. It's just about this exciting exploration of how can we heal that within us as moms, so that automatically can give our daughters a different launching pad.
How can we help our daughters achieve their full potential in life?
Well, I truly believe it's mindset work. It's not being the victim. It's like really helping them.
Being the victor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being the victor and unpacking what are those gifts, and what is your purpose, and what are those decisions of destiny, and how to give them those inner strength and those inner tools when those storms come. And to not be seeking so much external validation, but teaching them how to validate from within, and teaching them how to connect to their spiritual source, and teaching them how to access, you know, all of those giftings on the inside. And then we'll see what strong young women do, right? Like right now I have.
And they could be mentors to other young women, right?
Absolutely.
I've been where you are.
Totally.
Let me show you the way.
Absolutely. And that's kind of my mission. Like I have 19 powerhouse teenage girls in my academy right now, and I just was like, you watch out for them, because these are our future leaders.
That's awesome. Now you have mother-daughter events as well.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about those.
Yeah, I do. So lots of times I'll have the moms, and then I'll have mothers and daughters come together, and it's just about how do we really strengthen this relationship? How do we bond together? Because at the end of the day, like, it is such a sacred, beautiful relationship. And I know for me, being a mom has just been one of the greatest gifts, and one of the things that I just want to shout from the rooftops that I feel like I've been able to do so well. And so bringing them together in that space of honor, and just having the girls understand that this woman right beside guide you. I mean, she was your age once too, and they're like, really? It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? But, you know, it's like, access her wisdom, like, let her speak into your life. Or girls, you know, how can you look at this differently, you know, when your mom's telling you, hey, this is what I want for you. And then just teaching the moms how to talk to the girls and just doing a lot of that work so that they can see each other a little bit more clearly.
What can parents learn from their kids?
So much.
Because I mean, as parents,
yeah.
we like to teach our kids lots,
Yeah.
right? So.
Oh, I think that our kids are our greatest teachers. And so the wounding or the things that they're dealing with, it's just like, and the way they're reacting, sometimes it does have something to do with us. It has to do with like, okay, well, how have I allowed that behavior? You know, what do I need to heal in me? Or like, for example, like when my daughter turned 18, you know, I was just like a lot more paranoid because that's where some stuff had happened to me. And so, but yet that was a gift because it was like, okay, Mama Bear, time to heal that. And so then I can graciously say to my daughter, wow, I'm realizing this. And sorry if I've been like overprotective, and then that bonded us closer together. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful mirror if we choose to look at it that way.
Renee Peterson with Beautiful Insight Academy, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks so much for watching.